There is a common mistake that keeps intelligent, conscious, and hard-working people stuck for years. They believe that reality changes when willpower increases, when desire becomes stronger, when intention is repeated with more emotion. But the universe does not work like that. The logic is inverted. Life does not respond to what you intensely want in certain moments. It responds to the silent pattern you sustain when you are not trying to change anything. That is where the real command is being issued. When you understand this, you stop fighting with the world, and you begin to adjust the only point that truly governs everything, your continuous internal state. 1. The universe reacts to your pattern, not your will. Here is one of the most liberating and, at the same time, most uncomfortable truths. The universe does not respond to your momentary will. It responds to the pattern you sustain daily, even without realizing it. The command is not in what you desire, it is in what you repeat. Repeated thoughts create invisible tracks, not because they are strong, but because they are frequent. The mind learns through repetition, the body organizes itself through habit, and the field responds to this set, as if it were saying, "This is how this person lives." Frequent emotions confirm the root. It is not emotional peaks that define your experience. It is the internal climate to which you always return. It can be mild anxiety, constant haste, silent self-criticism, or even a demotivated neutrality. All of this communicates something specific to the field. Small choices reinforce the signal being emitted. How you start the day, how you react to small setbacks, how you speak to yourself when something does not go as expected. These details seem irrelevant, but they are exactly what build the pattern. Internal habit weighs more than occasional intention. That is why so many people want it badly and live with little result. Will appears at specific moments. The pattern governs the rest of the time, and the universe responds to the rest of the time. When you understand this, you stop trying to convince reality and begin to educate your own pattern, not with force, but with repeated awareness. 2. First you vibrate, then you see. This is one of the hardest inversions to accept, because the mind likes proof before changing. But the logic of the universe does not begin in the visible, it begins in the internal. Reality is a delayed reflection of the internal state. What you live today is, to a large extent, the confirmation of states that were already accepted before, not accepted intellectually, but accepted as normal. The field responds to what you treat as possible and sustainable. Pay attention to this. Feeling precedes any concrete manifestation. Before something appears, it needs to fit emotionally. If the body goes into alert when you imagine a certain outcome, there is active incompatibility. The universe does not judge this. It simply respects it. Real changes begin as subtle adjustments. It is not a big feeling. It is a micro-relaxation, a reduction in haste, a bit more stability in the face of the same scenario. That is how vibration changes, from the inside out, almost imperceptibly. The body perceives it before the mind understands it. Sometimes you cannot explain why something feels closer, but the body already behaves differently. Posture changes, breathing adjusts, rhythm slows down. This is the most reliable sign of alignment. Life confirms what has already been accepted internally. Not what you desire as an exception, but what you are already able to sustain as a state. That is why trying to see to believe keeps everything in the same place. The logic is inverted. Believe at the level of the body, and then see. 3. Wanting too much reveals lack, not creation. This point often generates resistance, because many people were taught to believe that wanting a lot is a sign of commitment. In the inverted logic of the universe, it is not. Wanting too much reveals lack. Internal urgency communicates that something is still distant on the inside, and the field responds by maintaining that distance. Not as punishment, but as vibrational coherence. The inverted logic dissolves anxiety. When you understand that you do not need to want more, but to tense less, something changes immediately. Pressure drops, the body relaxes, the mind slows down, and this does not push the result away. It brings it closer. Urgency indicates misalignment with the result. Whenever there is excessive haste, there is embedded fear, fear of it not happening, fear of wasting time, fear of being left behind. This fear creates noise, and noise delays. Tense expectation creates energetic delay. Constantly checking signs, dates, confirmations, and comparisons with other paths pulls you out of the now. And outside the now, there is no creation. There is only waiting, internal, calm signals, readiness. When the internal state begins to stabilize, the need to control diminishes. You do not stop wanting, you simply stop needing. And this difference changes everything. Silent confidence accelerates the process. Not because the universe likes those who trust more, but because trust reduces interference. Less interference, more flow. More flow, less delay. In the inverted logic, the less you run, the more life organizes itself to meet you. 4. The universe cooperates when you stop resisting. Here is a point that almost no one likes to look at honestly. Resistance is not something external. It is not the world making things difficult. Resistance is internal dialogue in conflict. It is when one part of you wants to move forward, but another continues arguing, complaining, or comparing. Resistance is energy in debate. When you complain about the current scenario, even in silent thought, you fix that scenario. Complaining does not relieve. Complaining anchors. The mind begins to revisit the same point repeatedly, and the field understands that this is still relevant. Comparison completely distorts the perception of time. You begin to measure your process by the rhythm of others, and this creates the sensation of delay, even when real progress is happening. The universe does not work on a comparative line. It responds to individual coherence. Judgment blocks new possibilities. When you judge your own process as slow, wrong, or flawed, you reduce the internal space for creative solutions. The field responds to judgment with repetition, because nothing new can enter where everything has already been condemned. Active acceptance reorganizes the field around you. Accepting is not resigning, it is stopping the fight with what is so that you can move what can be changed. When you accept the exact point where you are, the body relaxes, the mind clears, and the universe begins to cooperate. Not because you asked, but because resistance left the way. And here, something important enters for you now. If, while listening to this, you notice where you still resist, write in the comments a word that represents what you choose to release. Not a story, not an explanation, a simple word. This act is not for the algorithm. It is an internal gesture of active acceptance. And if this type of adjustment is making sense to you, subscribing to the channel is a way to stay in contact with this state of awareness so as not to automatically return to the pattern of resistance when the day gets tight. Remaining exposed to this type of reflection helps sustain the new perspective. When resistance falls, cooperation appears almost immediately. 5. Correct action is born from the correct state. Many people still believe that action creates alignment. In the inverted logic of the universe, it is the opposite. The state creates the correct action. When the internal state is misaligned, action becomes attempt. When the state is clear, action becomes consequence. It is not the amount of movement, it is direction. You can move a lot and remain in the same place. Or you can take one small step and change everything. The difference is not in effort, it is in the center from which the decision is born. Decisions change when the center changes. When you act from anxiety, each decision carries urgency. When you act from clarity, each decision carries firmness. Life responds very differently to these two states. Inspired action saves energy. You feel this in the body. The right action does not weigh you down. It does not require internal convincing. It does not generate regret shortly afterward. It fits, even when it is uncomfortable. It brings a sense of order. Forcing creates shortcuts that return to the beginning. When you force actions to accelerate results, you usually have to redo the path later. conversations held too early, decisions made out of fear, commitments assumed without alignment. All of this demands repayment. Internal clarity generates obvious steps, and these steps do not appear when you are pressuring the mind. They appear when you are present, observing, available. The inverted logic shows that acting less, but from the right place, creates more progress than acting a lot from confusion. When the state changes, the right action reveals itself on its own. 6. Receiving is an internal skill. This is one of the most mature points of the entire inverted logic. Receiving is not luck. It is not privilege. It is not something that happens when the time comes. Receiving is an internal skill that is developed. Allowing requires a vibrational maturity. Many people even want to receive calm but go into alert when something approaches. Fear of not sustaining it. Fear of losing it. Fear of making mistakes. This fear closes the field at the exact moment it begins to open. Worthiness is not proven. It is recognized. As long as you feel you need to prove value, work harder, suffer more, or justify yourself, receiving becomes conditional. The universe responds better to those who recognize value than to those who try to demonstrate value. Opening internal space attracts external support. When you relax control, something curious happens. The right people appear. Unexpected solutions arise. Ideas connect, not as a miracle, but as a consequence of a less rigid field. Excessive control closes invisible doors. You may even be on the right path, but not notice opportunities because you are attached to a specific format. Receiving requires openness to the unexpected. Practical trust sustains flow. It is not blind faith, it is functional trust. It is knowing that you can handle what comes, even if it is not exactly how you imagined it. When this trust settles in, the flow remains. In the inverted logic of the universe, you do not receive when you force, you receive when you are available. 7. The real challenge is maintaining the new state. Here is the point that separates understanding from mastery. Understanding the inverted logic is important. Applying it for one day is possible, but maintaining the new state is the real challenge. Creating is easy. Sustaining is mastery. Many people manage to align thought, feel less anxiety, act with more clarity, and even perceive initial responses from life. But at the slightest discomfort, they return to the old pattern, not out of weakness, but out of habit. The old state is still familiar. Results follow those who do not oscillate internally. Reality does not respond to your best day, it responds to what you sustain when no one is motivating you, when nothing extraordinary is happening, when the day is ordinary again. Returning to the old pattern undoes the gain, not because the universe takes something away, but because the command changes. The field simply follows the predominant state. That is why so many people feel they got close and then everything seems to cool off. It was not loss, it was oscillation. Emotional consistency stabilizes achievements. Consistency is not rigidity, it is conscious return. It is noticing when you have returned to fear, haste, comparison, or doubt, and calmly returning to the aligned state without drama, without guilt, without giving up. Aligned identity maintains reality. When the new state begins to become identity, you no longer need to correct yourself all the time. The body recognizes it. The mind obeys. Life follows. Alignment ceases to be effort and becomes natural. This is where the inverted logic completes itself. You no longer need to want intensely. You no longer need to control. You no longer need to prove anything. You simply remain being. And remaining changes everything. When you understand this logic, something profound happens. You stop fighting with the world. You stop trying to convince time. You stop competing for space with reality. You realize that the universe is not testing you. It is reflecting you. The pattern you sustain speaks louder than any request. The state you maintain creates more than any technique. The identity you inhabit organizes more than any effort. Nothing here requires haste. Nothing here requires blind faith. It requires only internal honesty and permanence. If you felt calm at any moment while listening to this, do not ignore it. Calm is not disinterest. It is alignment. It is a sign that something has already clicked. The inverted logic does not ask you to do more. It asks you to interfere less. Less resistance, less urgency, less oscillation. When this happens, life does not need to be forced. It cooperates. And when you stop fighting against the flow, you realize something simple and powerful. The universe was never against you. It was only waiting for you to stop contradicting yourself.